Hey, fight fans, welcome to the Zapata Brand Podcast, Boxing and Bagels edition, brought to you by Ringside. Go to ringside.com/podcast, and you too can get upwards of 40% off selected brands. Well, as a thumbnail indicated, a big upset last night. Well, actually, it was in the evening, in the world of boxing. Heavyweight Daniel Dubois takes out AJ Anthony Joshua. And who did it have on then? The head of the Coach Diz fan club, Kevin Iole. From there's Coach Diz.
I'm finally glad we get a serious interview on this channel for a change.
Yeah, there we go. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Coach. How are you?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Helping George out with the bagels.
And right here, he joins us on the podcast. Well, Kev, a couple things about that show last night or this evening. Let's get to a couple things out of the way first. The event itself, they can't keep doing this like this. This is an absolute disaster. You're doing a 6-hour-long show. You have concerts and every other thing in there. What isn't this not a turnoff at some point here to the regular boxing fans?
Well, I have mixed feelings, and I'm not 100% certain. Kind of evolved on exactly what I think. I think the shows were going too long. So I agree with you. I think they need to do something to kind of tighten up the show. Now, as far as the concerts go, right? Like, number one, what lousy production by DAZN. They don't even put on the screen who it is in the concert. Right? I didn't know who the hell it was. I didn't hear who they said was singing. It wasn't my person, right? My type of music. And I didn't know who it was. And I'm going, like, show us, put it on the screen who this is. I texted you, actually, and said who this is, right? But I think, guys, what they have to do is try to find new boxing fans, right? And so I'm not against trying things like this, see if you can make it work. But I think you can't just have this show go on forever. You're losing a lot of people, right? And people have to go to work. They have a lot of different things going on. And you're running this show into the ground by, being on for hours and hours and hours. I mean, there's some of their shows have been over 8 hours long. And that I think it has to change. The concerts and everything, I think they got to try something to add more fans to the sport, right? Is the concert it? I don't know. Like, I thought the production value, like when AJ and Dubois walked out yesterday, I thought was great, right? And it showed the grandeur and the spectacle of the place and the fire going off and all that. Really, really good stuff. And I think that's going to get a lot of fans. But I just think, they're missing the mark right now. They have to keep working to fine tune this.
Okay, second point on that, the broadcast team and including the referee too. I don't know if you saw this. Oh yeah, you did, because I texted you right when it happened. Number one, the referee was as biased as you can be. He missed a bunch of calls, and his count was off. Did you see the count was off? And they were yelling the count in the audience. They were yelling, and he was off. He was off by a second and a half. And then the broadcast team, that got to be one of the worst. One of the worst I've ever heard. This is the reason why they should have Jim Lampley, Roy Jones, and Max Kellerman back.
Well, I did a video on it when it was over. I was planning to, write a column on Monday, and then I said, you know what, I got to get this out now, because what really bothered me was the commentary was hugely biased toward Anthony Joshua the whole show. At one point, Kate Abdu said before one of the talking sessions they had, is it going to be better for the sport if Anthony Joshua wins? It's like, I mean, that's all they think about is Anthony Joshua, and there's two guys in there, and Dubois was the champion, and they're forgetting it. So yeah, the commentary was just over the top in favor of AJ. I guess that doesn't matter so much, but the refereeing, like, I thought in the first round, you get 2 warnings to Dubois, and I tweeted this immediately when it happened. Dubois hurts AJ. It was before the knockdown. He hits him with the right hand. He hurts him. AJ's holding. Dubois trying to pull his hands out to punch, and so their heads clash. The referee warns Dubois for head cutting and not AJ for holding. It's like, what the hell are you doing?
Right. And then when that happened, I immediately thought, not that the fix was in, but they want to get that Tyson Fury fight with AJ somehow. because if you look at Turkey Al-Sheikh, when this was going on, his hands were on his head in the crowd. And then the cameraman actually panned to him when that was over, and he waved them off. Like, get the hell off, get off here. Because he was pissed. He looked legitimately pissed. But wouldn't Daniel Dubois be a part of Sheik's event if he won? He'd still be a part of the event.
I think more money would be on with AJ and Titan, right?
Go ahead.
Well, I think that, AJ right? So that's why everybody was fawning all over AJ. And in Turkey's defense, he and AJ have sat next to each other in a bunch of other Riyadh season fights. I think they're personal friends. Where I don't know that Turkey knows. Turkey knows Dubois that well. Of all the egregious things that happened yesterday, I think Turkey's is the least, right? The referee was just horribly biased. The announcing was horribly biased. And those are things that need to be fixed. Like a lot of people think these referees are paid off, and I've heard it over the years all the time. And like in Nevada, they say it. And I know most of these referees for years and years and years, and they're good, honorable people. But sometimes what ends up happening is, you get caught up in the moment, right? And like they used to say it was Oscar De La Hoya that got favored. Well, they refereed or they worked a lot of Oscar fights, and they know him and they're used to him, and so they're watching it from his perspective. It's not that they're out and out trying to cheat, but they're just they're looking at it from his perspective, and that's the way the thing goes.
All right, so let's turn our attention to the fight here. Right out of the gate, coming to the ring, Triple D looked good. He looked like he was confident. He looked like he was not. The scenery didn't bother him. I did see a different look on AJ when he was coming to the ring, and I thought AJ would be used to this in his home country. They're both home country, but he's getting more of an accolades in that country than Triple D does. He didn't look as comfortable as I thought he should. And then clearly when the bell rang, his head, he stood straight up. For some reason, I went and I reviewed the Klitschko fight, and AJ had his hands high, behind the jab, didn't bring it down as much, did a little bit, but not as much. He got clocked. I mean, he looked like he was so overwhelmed by the event itself. He never got out of that first round.
It's interesting. I did not see that in him, right? But what I saw was that his chin, that first right hand Daniel landed before the knockdown, I think that changed the entire fight, because AJ doesn't have a great chin, and now he's going, holy shit, this guy's coming to fight, because Daniel wasn't jabbing, and it wasn't a feel-out first round, right? Daniel came out there, boom, and he cracked him with a right hand. And I think that AJ realized, I'm in a fight here. And I think there's you guys know, you box, right? The mental mindset of who the opponent is and what you expect. And I think AJ went into this fight thinking, I'm the star, I'm going to handle this guy. And then all of a sudden, Dubois is not intimidated. Dubois throws right hand. AJ feels it, and I think it changed the whole dynamic.
Kevin, I got a quick question. Do you think the Francis fight hurt AJ a little bit? Like,
I talked to somebody yesterday who actually made that point, and I had not considered it before, and I'm not sure how. The only way I would say it could have possibly hurt him is that he wasn't fighting another world-class boxer with those kind of skills, right? Francis was just there, open, available to be hit, and it's kind of like a sparring session, right? You're not in a competitive fight where you're having to set up your shots and create openings for yourself. And so maybe from that standpoint, it did. But I don't really understand from any other standpoint how it would have had that much of an impact.
Well, Kevin, you didn't see it all. And I'm not saying AJ was scared. I just thought he didn't look as comfortable as Daniel did. I mean, Daniel Dubois looked comfortable. He looked better in that first round when he had a great jab in that first round too than I'd seen him when he fought Usyk.
Yeah, I think AJ always has that sort of kind of countenance when he walks in, right? And so I didn't think that he looked like he was overwhelmed by the moment. I thought he was overwhelmed by the power of Triple D.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So as the rounds go on, were you picking up anything that you were saying that this might be an upset?
After the first round, and we should add too, the referee screwed up at the end of the first round because when there's a knockdown,
Yes.
the trainer's not allowed to come in the ring. So that was the round had ended, but there's no saving by the bell. So the trainer has to stay outside. He puts the stool in. Ben Davidson was in the ring. That should have been a disqualification, right? You're not allowed in the ring until, and he says, "Come to me." And then the referee said, "Okay, you're good to go. Now you can sit on the stool, and the trainer can come in the ring." So that was there. After the second round, I thought, okay, AJ, he's still taking shots, but I thought he kind of got his bearings back. And I thought the third round was going to be the round that would tell me something. And right off the bat in the third round, right in the first 30 seconds of the third round, AJ is hurt again. So, I think you could see from early in round three, I was wondering, was it a fluke? Did he just get caught cold with that, that shot in the first round? And then, it took him a while to recover. But then, you saw the third round, comes in, boom. So I just think, you saw from that point that AJ wasn't ready for that onslaught. And Dubois was throwing a lot of punches, that heavyweights typically don't throw that many punches. And boy, he was letting his hands go.
Here's another thing. So then after that third round, AJ still talking. It was talking to his corner, sticking his tongue out at Dubois. So I thought, okay, maybe he's got over it, and now he'll start getting. And he actually didn't look so bad. But then they started exchanging. We'll get to the final sequence here. He was hurt in that end of that fourth round. But then, and when I thought he rocked Dubois a little bit. And then he went for the kill, similar to what Holyfield and Bo, number 3, went in for the kill and got caught with an overhand right as he was thrown. Now, if AJ would have landed first, maybe a different story. But he got caught and he went down very bad, very hard. I knew he wasn't getting up from there. What did you think his confidence was getting better and he just got caught? Or you think that Dubois was kind of baiting him in?
Well, I think he did catch Dubois, right? Because on the other side of the ring, he landed a right hand. I think he landed 2 right hands, and Daniel was buzzed, right? And so I think AJ realized that. Now, there's 2 angles that they showed. The angle that was shot from the far corner behind, from behind AJ, you saw him draw back that right hand, and he did this, right? He came back with the right hand. And to my way of thinking, that was where he lost the fight, right? Because if he's here and just went with the right hand and turned into it, he's going to hit Dubois, and Dubois might be down. But instead, he came, and that gave Dubois the time to throw his own right hand, which came from his ear to the chin.
I hear you. Hey, Kevin, quick question. Where do you see them both going after this fight?
It's interesting. So Frank Warren promotes Dubois. He also promotes Tyson Fury. So Frank Warren right now is the man in the heavyweight division, right? He's going to call all the shots. So what I think is going to happen is AJ does have a rematch clause, right? So I think one or two things happen. I think AJ exercises the rematch clause. That is the most likely scenario I think is going to go on. Eddie Hearn I don't think can abide by the fact that AJ got beat, because at that point now you say, okay, the winners and the losers fight. He could still get the Tyson Fury fight if Fury loses to Usyk in the rematch. But is anybody going to want to see, if Fury wins the rematch, is anybody going to want to see AJ Usyk 3? That's the problem there, right? Usyk has beaten him 2 times. AJ coming off a loss. Does anybody really want to see AJ fight Usyk a 3rd time? So I think what will probably be the more likely scenario is that we have a rematch between Dubois and AJ. Let me say this real quickly. I hate rematch clauses. I don't mind rematches, right? But in this kind of case where one fighter, writes it into the contract before, it's like a get out of jail free. It's prize fighting. Have stakes. And the heavyweight championship is stakes, but also so is the fact that you have everything to lose if you lose the fight, right? That is what I think. But AJ knows he lost the fight and he still has the chance to come back. And to me, I think I hate that.
Do you want to see Usyk versus Triple D, the rematch?
Now that there's a fight, a rematch where I say yes, because I thought it was a low blow that Usyk or that.
No, it wasn't, Kevin. It wasn't a low blow. It was not. That was right there.
I thought it was a low blow, but there's a legit argument, right? So now Usyk comes back and stops him, but you can say, hey, it was tinged with controversy. So if Usyk wins, now you unify the championship again, which is always good, right? You're going to have the man in the division. We know as of today is still Usyk, no matter what anybody wants to say, but that'll clarify with all the belts. But then you also have that controversy and so to me, like, I think the best scenario for boxing fans would be if Usyk wins in December, then you get AJ and Fury. I mean, Fury doesn't retire. And then you have Usyk and Dubois for all the marbles.
So overall, Kevin, the upset happens. Is this a good scenario for boxing?
I think it is good. I mean, hey, look, AJ was you can't rip the guy, right? I mean, he's an Olympic gold medalist. He's a 2-time heavyweight champion. He's done a lot in the sport. I think they got over the top with how much he has done in the sport, right? He's never fought Deontay Wilder. He still hasn't fought Fury. Those are fights that in my mind, could have been made, and they weren't made, because of negotiations, right? And that's bullshit. When that happens, like, I hate that. Like, let's get and make these fights and show. So AJ deserves some criticism for doing that. But hey, the guy has been, he's been out there. His fights are entertaining. He's a classy guy, so he's good for the sport. Having said that, you need more good fighters. Like, when I think the 90s, most people wouldn't say it was the greatest era of heavyweights, but then you go back and you go, okay, we had Mike Tyson, we had Evander Holyfield, we had Lennox Lewis, we had Riddick Bowe, we had Vladimir Klitschko, we had Vitaly Klitschko, we had Ray Mercer. I mean, there's more. Like, I can go on. Look at how many top level heavyweights we had there. We don't have that now, right? Is that Ajit Kabayel going to get into that mix down the road? Who knows? I mean, he's looked good. There's some other guys out there. I think that young kid from the UK, Moses Utamwa, might be good, but he's still a couple years away. I don't think Jared Anderson anymore is a threat. Richard Torres, maybe. I think Richard Torres still has a way to go, but we don't have. You have Usyk, Dubois, Fury, and AJ at the top in whatever order you want to put them in. I think Usyk number one, and then order the next three, and then a big gap down, and we need to lengthen that field. So I think to have Dubois in there, have Dubois win that fight, show that he's an elite guy, that just gives another big heavyweight that's going to, hey, look, whoever Dubois fights next, there's going to be a big crowd. There's going to be a lot of interest in that fight. So I think it's good.
Here's another disrespect. I don't know if we touched on this. Daniel Dubois was brought to the ring first, and then introduced first, and he's the champion. So again, the deck was stacked. The deck was stacked against him. That alone, too, you should realize, wow, he really pulled off a huge upset. Thinking about, because they had this in the bag. They thought this was going to be the setup for Tyson Fury and AJ next.
100%. And I tweeted about that. I also put it in my story, and I mentioned on my YouTube video. It's boxing tradition. They did it with Floyd Mayweather a lot, right? But you know what? That's part of what's fun about boxing. Like, even if Floyd Mayweather's the biggest star, or AJ was the big star, have him come out first and have to wait in there for the champion, right? That's a little bit of the champion's edge. Now, a lot of the BS guys that people say you have to take it from the champion, that is incorrect. You know what the champion's true advantage in the competitive nature of the fight is? He keeps the belt in terms of a draw. That is huge. He doesn't have to win the fight. In order for you to become the champion, you have to get the decision. But for the champion to keep the belt, all he has to do is get a draw. And that is massive. So this notion that a lot of people have, you have to take it from the champion, is total BS, right? And the other one that's a smaller thing, like I mentioned, was, hey, when you get in the ring first, especially on a big show like that, where the walkout's going to be elaborate and it's going to take a long time, it's having the other guy in the ring walking around. It gets in his head, your hands. you get cold. You were warmed up in the back. Now you're in the ring for a while. The champion deserves that perk, not Anthony Joshua. What did Anthony Joshua do to get that? Dubois was the champion.
Well, Kevin, if we could, we'll jump off that for 1 second. The last weekend, the two big fights, the big fight weekends with UFC Noche and Canelo. Are there any pay-per-view buys that have come out for those? Because there's two wildly different opinions.
So I have not. I used to get. Let me just make this thing. I used to have sources, so I would have every single pay-per-view number on like the following Wednesday morning, and I would have it within like 2% always. But since it's become all digital, it's almost impossible to track it now. So you have to have somebody on the inside tell you. And when they tell you, you have no way to check it. And so you're reporting what they say and you don't know if it's true. ESPN is really good at keeping a lid on numbers. So whether it's a top ranked boxing pay-per-view or a UFC number, ESPN controls those numbers, not the promoters, not Top Rank, not UFC. So those numbers usually don't come out. Sports Business Journal reported that the Canelo fight did 600,000. My buddy Dave Meltzer at the Wrestling Observer, who is way more tied into the pay-per-view industry than Adam Stern of Sports Business Journal, he said it was like high 3. And so I would tend to believe Dave a little bit. Like I'll tell you this. The gate, the Canelo gate was listed at 17 million. They announced the attendance at 20,000. Having said that, right, this is how things go. Brad Goodman is the matchmaker at Top Rank. He was sitting in row 5 at the Canelo fight. Those were $5,000 seats. I can guarantee you, I've known Brad Goodman for 30 years. Brad Goodman ain't paying $5,000 a seat. And on top of that, he was with 3 other people. So Brad Goodman had 4 tickets. So he had $20,000 worth of tickets, and he was in row 5. Sean Gibbons, who runs Manny Pacquiao Promotions, same thing. I think he was in row 7, and he had $5,000 tickets, right? So they were giving these tickets away. So that, yes, people showed up, and it's hard to, even when you give tickets away, it's hard to get people to show up. But the numbers are phony. The numbers aren't what they are. The UFC numbers have always been more legit, which is why they've always been less than boxing, right? The UFC numbers actually, what I always say is, how much do people at the box office put their credit cards down to buy tickets? That tells me how much interest there is in that fight, right? And I think what you saw was on the Canelo fight, a lot of the tickets go to brokers. And Saturday morning, brokers still had a lot of those tickets to give out.
So nothing on the UFC numbers.
I have heard 0. ESPN is so good at keeping those numbers quiet, and my guess is it did around 500,000. It did not have. That's just a guess, right? It didn't have. It had O'Malley in there, who was a big draw, but then nobody else on that card, other than the brand and the Noche, was that big kind of a draw. Where where you had UFC 300. Where they had 11 current or former champions on that card, a lot of big names, a lot of draws. And so so my guess is that Noche did around 500,000, but it's just a total guess.
Yeah, I would think if they did wildly good numbers, they would put them out there. So maybe they didn't do it.
Like during ESPN, when now Dana alluded to this. This was funny, right? Dana alluded to a couple weeks ago at the Contender Series, he was talking about COVID. And he said, during COVID, we had fights that we thought would be 300,000 or 250,000, and there was nothing else to watch. So they did 900,000 or 1 million. And he was talking about how many fights did 1 million. And that was the first indication we ever had of pay-per-view numbers from ESPN.
Right. Hold on. What Coach Diz is giving me the old the Iggy here, trying to figure this one out here. Go ahead, did you ask? He's asking a question.
All right, here we go. I want in. So Dana White's coming through with this boxing. What's more information on that? Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
What was that?
So I asked him. I called him in Ireland the other day after I watched the Q&A. It was early morning Pacific time, that they had with Callum Walsh and Dana and the rest of the fighters on the card. And he said, for a long time, people were asking me if I'm in boxing. I'm in. So I called him as soon as the thing ended, and he said, a typical Dana dodge. He said, it'll all come out in due time, right? So he wasn't spilling the beans. But I don't know when he says I'm all in, if he means he's all in as a promoter. I think what he might mean is I'm all in as like a TV. Think of a way that they could grow UFC Fight Pass if they could get fights like yesterday's fight, AJ and Dubois, and put that on UFC Fight Pass, right? So, of course, that's the one growth area for their business, right? That they can expand UFC Fight Pass, and that's global, and so they can sell those pay-per-views. So I wonder if we're not missing the boat, because when he created Zuffa Boxing in 2017, a lot of people expected, okay, he's going to start signing fighters and he's going to be out there. And that never happened. And I think it's difficult because now even if you get Dana in, and Dana's a creative thinker and a problem solver, you have all these other people that you have to work with. You have to have opponents, right? And so, like, if let's just say, he has Dubois for the sake of argument. He's now got to deal with, Frank Warren, with Eddie Hearn for Joshua, and whoever else it might be that you want to put into a fight. You have all those other promoters involved. And so I wonder if Dana looks at it and says, maybe my money play is to do TV and become HBO, right? I'm going to be the broadcaster, and we'll have some fights on Fight Pass that are not pay-per-view, and just they're on Fight Pass for the $9.99 subscription. And then we'll have others that are pay-per-view. And maybe that way he makes boxing, he uses boxing to his advantage.
I mean, he did say he had a good relationship with Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren. The only one he didn't have a good was Bob Arum. So and De La Hoya. Jeez, that wouldn't be good.
What do you think of Clapback Thursday, by the way?
I love it.
I love it too.
I think it's awesome. Well, you don't like it?
I mean, I think he just I think Oscar looks stupid. He said, I mean, there's a shocking statement, right? But like Oscar said the other day, like he could rip Dana in so many ways that would be accurate. But he said, he says Fertitta, he's Fertitta's errand boy. Well, Fertitta's haven't been involved in 8 years, right? They sold the company in 2016. They haven't been involved in UFC at all, right? And he said Dana's not making any decisions. I tell you this, there's nobody that knows the behind the scenes of UFC that's not in the company better than me. And I see every single person, how deferential they are to Dana. George, I brought you in there, and you saw, like, when I said to Mark, I remember it when I got a text from Dana, and he said, come up to the room. And I said to Mark Ratner, hey, Dana said, come up to the room. He goes, oh, Dana said, come up, right? Yeah. They all defer to Dana on everything, right? People like Hunter Campbell and Craig Borsari, Lawrence Epstein, the chief operating officer, they have a say, but Dana is the final authority, and they all know. And Dana's the creative person in that group. So, like, Oscar just, like, come on. And then, and it's like petty feuds, right? Like, he doesn't like Canelo, so he's taking cheap shots at Canelo, right? I mean, I agreed with him about Canelo in the choice of opponent. So that one I'll give him. But he's been he's on this Canelo train for a long time. Like, come up with some good stuff, Oscar. And then I'm okay with Clapback Thursday.
Okay, so are we going to have a Clapback Friday from Kevin Iole?
I might clap back at Oscar, just, yeah, I mean, yeah. Oscar needs to be clapped back because some of the shit that he's doing.
Well, Kevin, as always, it was always good to have you here on Boxing and Bagels. And there's your guy. There's your guy. Coach Diz back in the game.
Jim Lampley one time told me I thought I was going to get interviewed by Coach Diz, and instead I got interviewed by the other guy. So that's what I always refer to George as now, Diz. I always refer to Coach Diz and the other guy.
There you go. There you go.
That should be the name of our show, which, by the way, Kevin Iole's YouTube channel. Still looking for that name, Kevin. You got to get it out there. We need a name for that YouTube channel. It's growing like crazy with all those great interviews. And, of course, Kevin Iole at keviniole.com. And your social media. How can they follow you on social media?
You can get me on Facebook and Instagram at Kevin Iole and on X at Kevin I.
Well, Kevin, thanks for joining us here on the big upset last night, which is going to shake up the boxing world. Anyway, Kevin, I will talk to you this week.
We'll see you guys. Be well.
See ya, Kevin.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.